When homeless and pregnant, Jane uttered the words, "I have nowhere to go," in front of the city's most luxurious building. She never imagined that the billionaire watching her would change her destiny forever. The late afternoon sun bathed the streets of the financial district in a golden light as Jane Miller finally allowed herself to cry. She sat under a shady tree, her floral dress now wrinkled after hours of walking aimlessly, and stroked her 8-month pregnant belly as tears rolled silently down her cheeks. $7. That's all she had left in the world. 7. A suitcase with clothes that no longer fit, and a baby who would arrive in just a few weeks. "Don't cry, my love," she whispered to her belly, feeling a little kick in response. "Mom's going to find a way. She always does." But this time, Jane wasn't sure if that was true. It had all started that morning when her ex-boyfriend, Mark, had made good on his threat. "If you don't come back to me, you'll regret it," he had said, when she finally gathered the courage to leave him after 2 years of psychological manipulation. She thought it was just another of his empty threats, but she was wrong. Mark had canceled the lease on the small apartment they shared. The lease was only in his name, and he had called the police to have her evicted. "Please," she had begged the officer as they removed her few belongings. "I'm pregnant. Just give me a few more days to find another place." "I'm sorry, ma'am," the officer had responded, clearly uncomfortable. "The order is effective immediately. The owner says you have no legal right to be here." And so, at 10 a.m. on a random Tuesday, 24-year-old Jane Miller was literally on the street. She had walked for hours, dragging her suitcase through the city streets, stopping at every "help wanted" sign she found. But the answer was always the same. A look at her prominent belly and a polite, "We'll call you." No one hires a woman about to give birth. No one. The financial district had been her last stop, not by choice, but by sheer exhaustion. Her swollen feet couldn't take another step, and the tree offered the only shade for blocks around. She had sat down with the intention of resting for only 5 minutes, but now, 3 hours later, she was still there, paralyzed by the reality of her situation. No family. Her parents had died in an accident when she was 16. No close friends. Mark had made sure to isolate her from everyone during their relationship. No job. She had been fired from the bookstore where she worked when her pregnancy began to interfere with her performance, according to her boss. And now, no home. "What am I going to do with you, my baby?" she murmured, feeling another kick. "How can I take care of you if I don't even have a place to sleep tonight?" It was then that the black Mercedes S-Class stopped at the traffic light right in front of her. Robert Navarro tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, irritated by the unusual traffic. The meeting with the Japanese investors had run longer than expected, and now he would be late for his 5 p.m. video conference. At 38, he had built a tech empire from scratch, becoming one of the wealthiest men in the city. But success had a price. 18-hour days, lonely nights, and an empty mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. As he waited for the light to change, his gaze wandered to the sidewalk, and that's when he saw her. A young woman, obviously pregnant, sitting under a tree with a suitcase beside her. It wasn't uncommon to see homeless people in the city, but something about her made him look twice. Maybe it was the way she held her back straight, despite being clearly exhausted. Or perhaps it was the clean but wrinkled floral dress, which suggested her situation was recent. Or maybe it was the way she stroked her belly as she spoke softly, as if she were consoling her unborn baby. The light changed to green. Robert accelerated, but as he drove, the image of the woman did not leave his mind. There was something in her eyes. He hadn't seen desperation, but determination. Not defeat, but dignity. She reminded him of Marina, his late wife, who even in her final days in the hospital had maintained that same unbreakable grace. Marina. 5 years since cancer took her. 5 years living like a ghost in his own life, burying himself in work to avoid feeling the emptiness she had left. Without realizing it, Robert had driven around the block. "What are you doing?" he asked himself aloud. "It's not your problem." But his hands were already turning the steering wheel, parking the Mercedes in an empty spot a few feet from the tree. Jane looked up as the man's shadow fell over her. He was tall, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than everything she had ever owned, with honey-colored eyes that looked at her with a mix of curiosity and something more, concern. "Excuse me," he said, his voice softer than she expected. "Are you okay?" Jane almost laughed. Okay? She was pregnant, homeless, with $7 to her name. No, she was definitely not okay. I'm perfectly fine, she replied, lifting her chin. Just resting for a moment. Robert noticed the suitcase, the wrinkled dress, the eyes swollen from crying. Do you need help? I don't need your charity, Jane said quickly. Maybe too quickly. Pride was the only thing she had left. I'm not offering charity, Robert said, surprising himself. I'm asking if you need help. There's a difference. And what would that difference be? Charity is given out of pity. Help is offered out of humanity. Jane studied him for a moment. He didn't seem like one of those men who approached vulnerable women with bad intentions. There was something genuine in his expression, a sadness in his eyes that she recognized because she carried it herself. And what kind of help would you be offering exactly? Robert fell silent. He hadn't thought that far ahead. What was he doing, exactly? Why had he stopped? Are you hungry? He finally asked. There's a cafe around the corner. I'm not a beggar, Jane said with dignity. I don't need you to buy me food. What I need is an opportunity, a job. She gestured to her belly. I know I don't look like the ideal candidate right now, but I'm hard-working, responsible, and I learn fast. I studied literature for 3 years before things got complicated. I know how to organize, file, write, edit. I can do any office work that doesn't require lifting heavy things. Robert looked at her with new respect. Here was a woman clearly at her lowest point, and instead of asking for handouts, she was asking for a job. What happened? He found himself asking. If you don't mind me asking. Jane considered not answering, but something in the way he looked at her, without judgment, only with genuine curiosity, made her speak. My ex-boyfriend canceled the lease this morning. The apartment was in his name. I was fired from my job 2 months ago when my pregnancy started to become an inconvenience, and my parents died when I was a teenager. So here I am, with everything I own in that suitcase, trying to figure out how I'm going to take care of my baby when I don't even have a place to sleep tonight. The words came out in a torrent, and when she finished, Jane was surprised that she had been so honest with a complete stranger. Robert felt something stir in his chest, something that had been frozen for 5 years. This woman reminded him so much of Marina, not physically, but in spirit. Marina had also been an orphan. She had also fought alone before they met. I have a library, he said abruptly. Sorry. In my house, I have a library with over 5,000 books that need to be cataloged and organized. I've been putting the task off for years. If you really studied literature, you're probably qualified for the job. Jane blinked. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity, Robert corrected. Fair pay, flexible hours, considering your condition. Could you start tomorrow? Yes. She stopped, remembering her words. She had nowhere to sleep that night. Where are you staying? He asked, although he already knew the answer. I'll find something, Jane said quickly. Don't worry about that. Just tell me what time to show up tomorrow and I'll be there. Well, what money are you going to use to pay for a hotel? The blush rose on Jane's cheeks. That's not your problem. It is if I want my new employee to be in a fit state to work tomorrow, Robert responded pragmatically. Look, I have a guest house on my property. It's completely separate from the main house. It has its own entrance, kitchen, everything. It's been empty for years. You can stay there tonight, temporarily, until you get your first paycheck and can find your own place. I can't accept that. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because you could be a psychopath. Because things that seem too good to be true usually are. Robert almost smiled, the first real smile in a long time. You're right to be cautious. He took out his business card and handed it to her. Robert Navarro, CEO of Navarro Tech. Google me. You'll find everything about me, including my address, which is public record. You'll also find that my wife died 5 years ago, and that since then I've lived like a hermit, which probably makes me boring, but not dangerous. Jane took the card with trembling hands. Navarro Tech. Even she had heard of the company. This man wasn't just rich. He was one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs. Why? She asked softly. Why help me? Robert was honest. Because my wife was once where you are now. Alone, pregnant, with no family. Someone gave her a chance when she needed it most. She used to say that life is a circle. The help you give eventually finds its way back to you. He paused. And because that guest house has been empty for 5 years, and that library has been disorganized for 5 years, it seems we both need something the other can offer. Jane looked at the card, then at the man in front of her. Every survival instinct told her to be careful, but she also knew she had no options. In a few weeks her baby would be born. She needed a miracle, and maybe, just maybe, this stranger with the sad eyes was that miracle. "Just for tonight," she finally said, "and I'll start work tomorrow. I want to earn my keep." "Of course," Robert agreed. "Can you walk to my car? I'll drive you to the house." As Jane got up with difficulty, leaning on the tree for balance, Robert felt another tug in his chest. He automatically extended his hand to help her, and when she took it, he felt a jolt he hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you," she murmured. And when their eyes met, they both felt that something fundamental had changed in their lives. As they walked to the Mercedes, neither of them could imagine that this chance encounter under a tree on a sunny day would be the beginning of a love story that would heal 2 broken hearts and create a family where there had only been loneliness. Destiny, it seemed, had its own plans. The Mercedes stopped in front of a wrought iron gate that opened automatically as it recognized the vehicle. As they drove down the jacaranda-lined driveway, Jane couldn't believe her eyes. The mansion that rose before her seemed to be taken from an architectural magazine. 3 floors of modern elegance with floor-to-ceiling windows, perfectly manicured gardens, and a marble fountain in the center of the circular driveway. "The guest house is over here," Robert said, noticing her overwhelmed expression. He turned down a side path that led to a smaller but equally beautiful building, hidden among the trees. "As I told you, it's completely separate. You'll have total privacy." Jane looked at the small guest house, which was bigger than any place she had ever lived. It was a cottage-style house with white walls, blue shutters, and a small porch with 2 rocking chairs. "This is too much," she murmured. "It's temporary," Robert reminded her, although something in his voice suggested that he wasn't entirely convinced of that either. He took a key from his keychain and handed it to her. "The kitchen is stocked with the basics. Tomorrow you can make a list of what you need." "Mr. Navarro." "Robert," he corrected. "If you're going to work for me, Mr. Navarro is too formal." "Robert," she repeated, and he felt something strange hearing his name on her lips. "I don't know how to thank you." "By working," he replied simply. "The library really needs attention. You can take tonight to get settled and rest. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., if that works for you, I'll show you what you need to do." He opened the door to the house, and Jane entered slowly, as if she was afraid it would all disappear if she moved too fast. The interior was cozy and warm, a living room with a fireplace, a full kitchen, a bedroom visible through an open door. "The doctor," Robert said suddenly. "Sorry. Do you have a doctor for the pregnancy? Are you getting prenatal care?" Jane looked down. "No, not for 2 months. When I lost my job, I lost my medical insurance." Robert frowned. "That's unacceptable. First thing tomorrow, I'll arrange for you to see Dr. Miller. He's the best obstetrician in the city. I can't afford. It'll be part of your employment package, full medical insurance. We're not discussing this," he added when he saw she was about to protest. "A healthy employee is a productive employee." Jane nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She couldn't cry, not now, not in front of him. "There are clothes in the closet," Robert continued, suddenly uncomfortable. "They were Marina's. She used to stay here sometimes when she wanted to be alone to write. They're probably not your exact size, but they're fine," Jane said softly, understanding how difficult it must be for him to offer his late wife's clothes. "My number is in the notepad by the kitchen phone. If you need anything at all, call. The main house is only 100 yards away." She nodded again, not trusting her voice. Robert turned to the door, but stopped before leaving. "Jane, I know you don't know me, and you have no reason to trust me, but I want you to know that you're safe here. Marina would have wanted this house to be used to help someone who needed it." And with that, he left, leaving Jane alone in the cozy silence of the cottage. For a moment, she just stood there in the middle of the living room, trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. This morning, she had been evicted, and now she was in a beautiful house with a job waiting for her in the morning. "Can you believe it, baby?" she whispered to her belly, feeling a series of kicks in response. "Maybe our luck is finally changing." She explored the house slowly. The kitchen was indeed stocked. There was milk, eggs, bread, fruits, vegetables. There were even cookies and tea. The refrigerator was full. The cabinets had plates, pots, everything she needed. It was as if someone had prepared the house specifically for her, even though Robert had said it had been empty for years. In the bedroom, she opened the closet with trembling hands. There were clothes hanging neatly. Dresses, blouses, pants. Some still had the tags on. In the drawers, she found new, unused underwear, and in a corner, there were maternity clothes. Jane sat heavily on the bed, overwhelmed. Marina had been pregnant. That's why Robert had helped her, because she reminded him of his wife. She took one of the maternity dresses, a soft blue one with small white flowers. It was beautiful and looked like her size. She allowed herself to cry then. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of fear for what was to come. After taking a shower, the first hot bath in days since Mark had started making her life miserable, she put on the blue dress. It fit her perfectly. She looked in the mirror, and for the first time in months, she didn't see a defeated woman. She saw hope. That night, as she ate a simple omelette with toast, Jane took out her old phone and Googled Robert Navarro. What she found left her breathless. Article after article about his business success, his fortune estimated in the billions, his technological innovations. But she also found older articles from 5 years ago. Tragic loss. Marina Navarro passes at 32 after battling serious illness. Navarro Tech CEO devastated by the loss of his wife. Robert Navarro retires from public life after his wife's passing. There was a photo of them together at a charity gala. Marina was beautiful, radiant, with a smile that lit up the entire image. And Robert looked completely different. Younger, not just in age, but in spirit. He had a genuine smile. His eyes sparkled as he looked at his wife. He was a whole, happy, loving man. Jane understood then the depth of his loss. It wasn't just that he had lost his wife. He had lost a part of himself. Meanwhile, in the main house, Robert stood in front of his study window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking at the lights on in the guest house. What had he done? Why had he invited a complete stranger into his life? But he knew the answer. It was the way Jane had protected her dignity, even in her most vulnerable moment. It was the way she talked to her unborn baby. It was the strength she radiated despite being completely alone. Marina would have done the same. Marina would have helped. His phone rang. It was Carmen, his personal assistant. "Robert, I saw you canceled all your morning meetings. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Carmen. I need the morning off for a personal matter." "A personal matter?" Carmen couldn't hide her surprise. Robert never had personal matters. "I hired someone to organize the library. I need to show her the job." "Oh, that's wonderful. It's about time someone took care of that." "Who is she?" "A young woman named Jane Miller. She's very qualified. She studied literature. Excellent. Do you need me to prepare anything? An employment contract? HR paperwork?" "Yes, prepare everything. Full salary, full medical benefits, the whole package. For organizing a library?" Carmen couldn't help but ask. "Carmen, do you trust my judgment?" "Always, boss." "Then trust me now." After hanging up, Robert went up to his bedroom, but he couldn't sleep. Instead, he found himself at the door of the room he had kept closed for 5 years. The room Marina had been preparing. He opened the door slowly. Everything was exactly as she had left it. The walls painted a soft yellow, the crib half assembled in the corner, the shopping bags with baby clothes she never got to put away. Marina had been 6 months pregnant when they discovered her serious illness. The doctors said she had to choose aggressive treatment that would save her but terminate the pregnancy, or wait until after the birth, which would likely be too late for her. Marina chose to wait. "I'd rather give life to our child than live without him," she had said. But in the end, they lost both. The baby was stillborn at 7 months, and Marina passed away 2 weeks later, whispering, "I'm sorry," with her last breath. Robert closed the door softly. It wasn't fair to project the memory of Marina onto Jane. She was her own person, with her own story, her own struggle. He would help her because it was the right thing to do, not because he was trying to rewrite the past. The next morning, Jane woke up disoriented. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came back to her. the eviction, the meeting with Robert, this incredible house. She dressed carefully in the blue maternity dress and fixed her hair as best she could. At 9 o'clock, she heard a soft knock on the door. Robert was there, dressed more casually than the day before in jeans and a blue shirt that made him look younger, more approachable. "Good morning," he said. And there was something different about him. He seemed to have made a decision overnight. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I've slept in months," Jane admitted. "I'm glad. Did you have breakfast?" "Yes, thank you. Everything you left in the kitchen is overly generous." "It's practical," he corrected. "I can't have my librarian fainting from hunger. Ready to see your new workplace?" They walked together toward the main house, and Jane couldn't help but notice that Robert shortened his strides to match her slower pace. They entered through a side door that led directly to the library. When Jane saw the room, she gasped. It was huge, with double-height ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 of the 4 walls were covered in cherry-wood bookshelves, filled to the brim with books. There were rolling ladders to reach the highest shelves, leather armchairs scattered about for reading, and a massive antique desk in the center. But what really shocked her was the disorganization. Books were piled on every available surface, some on the floor, others in boxes. There was no visible system of organization. Marina was a voracious reader, Robert explained. She bought books compulsively. So did I, though less so. After she passed, I just kept buying books, but I never organized them. Her system left with her, I guess. "It's beautiful," Jane whispered, walking over to a pile and delicately picking up a book. It was a first edition of 100 Years of Solitude. "Is this real?" Marina collected first editions. There are probably hundreds of them mixed in with the regular books. "This is going to require a complete cataloging system. I'll need to separate them by value, genre, author, create a digital index. Do whatever you deem necessary," Robert said. "There's no rush. Take all the time you need and sit down when you need to. In fact, I'll bring you a more comfortable chair." "I'm pregnant, not an invalid," Jane said with a small smile. "I know, but my wife used to say the same thing and then fainted once from standing too long." He stopped, surprised to have shared that memory so easily. She worked throughout her pregnancy. She was a writer. She worked right up until the day of the birth. A shadow crossed his face. The birth that never came. Jane didn't know what to say. The pain in his voice was palpable. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," Robert said, shaking his head. "It's okay," Jane said softly. "Losing someone you love. There's no time limit for grieving." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw genuine understanding in her eyes. Not pity, but understanding. "Who did you lose?" he asked. "My parents, when I was 16. A car accident." Jane touched her belly. "That's why this baby means so much to me. It's the first family I'll have in 8 years. And the father, he doesn't exist for us," she said firmly. "He made his choice when he decided that control was more important than love." Robert nodded, respecting her need not to go into detail. "Well," he said, changing the subject, "where would you like to start?" Jane looked around the library, her mind already organizing, planning. "First, I need to do a general inventory, see what we have. Then I can start categorizing." "Perfect. There's a laptop on the desk you can use. The password is..." He stopped. Marina always wrote the date. Jane took note of the date. "If you need anything at all, I'll be in my office on the 2nd floor. The intercom on the desk connects directly to me," Robert called out as he headed for the door. "Thank you, not just for the job, for trusting me." "Don't thank me yet," he replied with a half smile. "Wait until you see the complete mess this library is." But as he left, Robert knew that something had changed. For the first time in 5 years, the house didn't feel empty. There was life in it again. And while that terrified him, it also felt right. 3 weeks had passed since Jane started working in the library, and the transformation was remarkable, not only in the physical space, but in the entire atmosphere of the Navarro house. Every morning, Robert found some excuse to stop by the library before leaving for the office. "Just checking on the progress," he would say, although they both knew there was more to it than that. He brought her ginger tea for morning sickness, saltine crackers for when she felt dizzy, and always asked how she was feeling. "Robert, I'm really fine," Jane would assure him each time, although secretly she was moved by his concern. The library was beginning to take shape. Jane had created a digital cataloging system, separating the first editions from the regular books, organizing them by genre, author, and year. She had discovered incredible treasures: original manuscripts, autographed books, editions worth thousands of dollars. "Marina had exquisite taste," she commented one afternoon, showing Robert a signed edition of Like Water for Chocolate. "Every book tells a story, not just in its pages, but in why she chose it." Robert took the book, stroking the signature with his thumb. "That was the first book she gave me when we were dating. She said that love and food were the two most important things in life." "She was right," Jane said softly, unconsciously placing a hand on her belly. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Jane was on one of the rolling ladders, reaching for a book on the top shelf, when she felt the first pain. It was sharp, different from the normal discomforts of pregnancy. "Ouch," she gasped, grabbing onto the shelf. "Jane?" Robert's voice came from the doorway. He had come home early from the office, something he had started doing more and more frequently. I don't know," she admitted, and the fear in her voice made him run to her. "Get down from there slowly," he ordered, holding the ladder with one hand and extending the other to her. "Lean on me." When her feet touched the floor, another pain shot through her, stronger. This time she doubled over, clutching Robert's arm. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "It's too early. I still have 5 weeks to go." Without hesitation, Robert lifted her into his arms. "We're going to the hospital now." I don't have the money for—" "Jane," he interrupted her firmly. "Stop worrying about money. The only thing that matters right now is you and the baby." The drive to the hospital was torture. Jane moaned with each contraction, clinging to Robert's hand as he drove with the other, exceeding all speed limits. "Breathe," he told her, trying to stay calm, even though he was terrified inside. "We're almost there." When they arrived at the ER, Robert practically jumped out of the car, yelling for help. In seconds, Jane was in a wheelchair, being rushed inside. "Are you the father?" a nurse asked as they ran down the hallway. Robert hesitated for a split second, then decided. "Yes, that's me." Jane looked at him with wide eyes, but she didn't contradict him. The next few hours were a blur of doctors, machines, and medical terminology that Robert barely understood. What he did understand was one word: premature. "The baby's coming," explained Dr. Mendez, the on-call obstetrician. "We can't stop the labor. At 35 weeks, there's a good prognosis, but the baby will need special care. Do whatever is necessary," Robert said immediately. "No matter the cost, just save them both." Jane was terrified. "He's too small still." "What if he—" Robert took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Your baby is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time since Marina passed, Robert was in a hospital, in a delivery room, and all the memories he had buried came rushing back. But this time was different. This time he wasn't losing someone. This time he was helping to bring life into the world. The birth was difficult. Jane was strong, but fear consumed her. Robert stayed by her side every second, letting her squeeze his hand until she lost feeling, whispering words of encouragement, wiping the sweat from her forehead. "I can't," she gasped after 3 hours of labor. "Yes, you can," Robert insisted. "You're the strongest woman I know. Your baby needs you. One more push." And then, at 2:47 a.m., Sam Miller was born. Small, weighing just over 4 pounds, but with a cry that filled the entire room. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, but her expression was serious. "He needs to go to the neonatal intensive care unit immediately. His lungs aren't fully developed." "Can I see him?" Jane begged, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, just for a second." The nurse brought the baby, wrapped in blankets, and for a brief moment, Jane could see her son's face. Small, wrinkled, perfect. "Hello, my love," she whispered. "Mommy's here." Then they took him away, and Jane collapsed in sobs. "He's going to be okay," Robert promised, though he was trembling himself. "The doctors here are the best. Sam is a fighter just like his mom." The next 72 hours were the longest of their lives. Sam was in an incubator, connected to machines that helped him breathe, monitors that tracked every beat of his tiny heart. Jane didn't leave his side, and surprisingly, neither did Robert. "You don't have to stay," Jane told him the first night, seeing him uncomfortable in the hospital chair. "You've already done too much." "Remember what I told you?" he replied. "I'm not going anywhere." Carmen, his assistant, couldn't believe what she was hearing when Robert called her to cancel all his meetings for the next few days. "You're in the hospital? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's complicated. Just cancel everything until further notice." "Robert, in 15 years you've never canceled more than one day of work. What's going on?" "I'm where I need to be." That's all he said. The second night, while Jane slept, exhausted on the couch in the neonatal unit, Robert found himself alone, looking at Sam through the incubator's glass. The baby was so small, so fragile, but there was something fierce in the way he fought for every breath. "You have to make it, little guy," he murmured. "Your mom needs you and I—" He stopped, surprised by what he was about to say. "I need you too." It was true. In just 3 weeks, Jane and her unborn baby had become a part of his life in a way he hadn't anticipated. The house no longer felt empty when he arrived. There was purpose in his days beyond work. There was laughter, conversation, life. "Mr. Navarro?" A nurse approached. "The baby is showing improvement. His oxygen levels are rising." "Is that good?" "It's very good. If he continues like this, he could be out of intensive care in a day or two." Robert felt a relief so profound he had to sit down. He hadn't felt anything like it since Marina. When Jane woke up, she found him sitting next to the incubator, a hand pressed against the glass as if he could transmit strength to the baby through it. "He's getting better," he said without turning around. "The nurse says he's breathing better." Jane walked over, standing next to him. "Robert, I need to ask you something. Anything. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? We're nothing to you." Robert finally looked at her, and Jane saw tears in his eyes. "5 years ago, I was in a room just like this," he began, his voice barely a whisper. The baby came too early. She had been fighting her illness, but she chose to delay treatment to give the baby a chance. In the end, his voice broke. "I lost them both. The baby first, then her 2 weeks later. Robert, I swore I would never come back to a hospital, that I would never allow myself to feel anything for anyone again. It was easier to be alone, to be empty, than to risk that pain again." He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "But then you appeared, sitting under that tree, talking to your baby with so much love, and something inside me that I thought had been buried with Marina began to wake up. And now, watching Sam fight, watching you be so brave, I realize I've just been surviving, not living." "We're not Marina and her baby," Jane said softly. "You can't replace—" "No," Robert interrupted her. "I'm not replacing them. Marina will always have a place in my heart. But maybe, just maybe, the heart has room for more than one love story. Maybe it can expand instead of closing down." Jane squeezed his hand. "Marina was very lucky to have you." "I was the lucky one," he corrected. "And now," he looked at Sam, then at her. "I feel like life is giving me a second chance. Not the same story, but a new one. If you'll let me." Before Jane could answer, the machines began to beep. Sam had opened his eyes for the first time. "Look," the nurse exclaimed. "He wants to meet his parents." Neither of them corrected the plural. Dr. Mendez came to check on him and smiled broadly. "He's a little miracle. His lungs are responding better than expected. If he continues like this, you'll be able to take him home in a week or two." "Home," Jane repeated, suddenly realizing she didn't have a real home to take her baby to. "Home," Robert confirmed firmly. "To our home." That night, for the first time, Jane breastfed Sam. It was a complicated process with all the wires and monitors, but the baby latched onto her with a determination that brought tears to both adults' eyes. "He's perfect," Jane whispered, tracing her son's tiny face with a finger. "They both are," Robert replied, and the love in his voice was unmistakable. On the third day, Sam was transferred from intensive care to intermediate care. His lungs had strengthened remarkably, and he no longer needed help breathing. "He's a fighter," Dr. Mendez commented. Just like his mom. And he has the best father supporting him, a nurse added, smiling at Robert. This time, it was Jane who didn't correct the assumption. During those days in the hospital, something fundamental changed between Robert and Jane. The barriers of employer-employee, of benefactor-beneficiary, dissolved. They were simply two people united by their love for a little one who was fighting for his life. Robert brought clean clothes for Jane, decent food from outside, even a pillow from home to make her more comfortable. They took turns watching Sam, talking to him, singing to him. "What are you singing to him?" Jane asked one night, listening to Robert hum softly. "A song Marina wrote," he admitted. "She never got to sing it to, but I don't think she'd mind if Sam heard it." "Tell me about her," Jane asked softly about Marina. And for the first time in 5 years, Robert spoke freely about his wife. He told her about how they met in a bookstore, both reaching for the same book, about her contagious laugh, her passion for writing, her infinite kindness. "She would have loved you," he said finally. "You have the same fighting spirit. I wish I could have met her," Jane responded sincerely. On the 5th day, the news they had been waiting for arrived. "Sam is ready to go home," Dr. Mendez announced. "He'll need close follow-up, but he can continue his recovery at home." Jane cried with relief, hugging Robert without thinking. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "We'll need to get everything ready," Jane said, suddenly going into practical mode. "A crib, diapers, baby clothes." "It's all ready," Robert admitted. "What?" "I asked Carmen to prepare everything. The room next to yours in the guest house. It's a fully equipped nursery now." "Robert, I can't keep accepting." "Jane," he interrupted her softly. "In these 5 days, Sam has become... I've come to love him as if he were my own. And you," he paused, searching for the right words. "You've brought light back into my life. Please, let me do this. Not out of obligation or charity, but because I want to. Because you've become my chosen family." The day Sam came home, it was as if the entire Navarro property came to life. Carmen had come especially, even though it was her day off, and she couldn't hold back tears when she saw the small bundle in Jane's arms. "He's beautiful," she whispered, looking in awe as Robert helped Jane out of the car with infinite care. "I can't believe you're doing this, Robert. Marina would be so proud." "Carmen," Robert said softly, "I'd like to introduce you to Sam. And you already know Jane, the librarian who changed everything." Carmen smiled, and there was so much meaning in those words that Jane blushed. The guest house had been transformed. Where there was once a simple guest room, there was now a baby paradise. A light wood crib, a changing table, a rocking chair, and more toys and clothes than a baby could ever need. "This is too much," Jane murmured, overwhelmed. "Nothing is too much for Sam," Robert replied, and the naturalness with which he had adopted the paternal role moved her deeply. That first night at home was eye-opening. Sam cried every 2 hours, needing to be fed, changed, comforted. Jane was exhausted after the days in the hospital, and at 3 a.m., when the baby started crying again, she just couldn't get up. Then she heard footsteps on the porch. Robert appeared in the doorway in his pajamas and barefoot. "I heard the crying from the main house," he said softly. "Let me help." "You don't have to." "I want to," he insisted, approaching the crib with surprisingly confident movements for someone with no experience. He picked up Sam. "Hey, champ." "What's wrong? Missing your mom?" Sam stopped crying almost immediately, looking at Robert with huge eyes. "He has the same effect on you," Jane observed from the bed. "When you look at him, I calm down." Robert looked at her, and something electric passed between them. "Get some rest," he said softly. "I've got him." He sat in the rocking chair with Sam, humming softly as the baby clung to his finger. Jane watched them, her heart expanding in ways she didn't think were possible. This man, who had no obligation to them, was here at 3 a.m., cradling her son as if he were his own. "Robert," she whispered. Thank you. There's nothing to thank me for. This is what I always wanted. A family. I thought I'd lost my chance when Marina left, but you..." He stopped, looking down at Sam, who had fallen asleep in his arms. "You've given me a reason to live again." From that night on, they established an unspoken routine.
Robert would arrive every morning with breakfast, spend an hour with Sam before leaving for work, and return early every afternoon. Dinners became family events in the main house kitchen, with Jane cooking while Robert entertained Sam. "You don't have to cook," Robert would protest. "I can hire a chef." "I like to cook," Jane would insist. "It makes me feel useful. Besides, you need real food, not those business meals Carmen always orders for you."
One afternoon, 2 weeks after coming home, Jane was in the library working while Sam slept in a bassinet beside her, surrounded by toys. "How's the job going?" Robert asked, appearing in the doorway. "I found something," Jane said excitedly. "Look at this." She showed him a handwritten notebook hidden between two antique books. "It's Marina's writing." Robert immediately recognized it, his voice trembling. "It's a diary," Jane explained softly, "about her pregnancy. I haven't read it, of course, but I thought you'd want to have it." Robert took the notebook with trembling hands, leafing through it. Marina's words jumped off the pages, her excitement for the baby, her fears, her love for Robert. "Today I felt the first kick," he read aloud. "Robert put his hand on my belly and waited 2 hours until he felt it too. I've never seen him so happy." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I didn't know she had written this." "There's more," Jane said softly. "Letters for the baby. For you. She kept them all here." Robert sat heavily in one of the armchairs. "After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to come in here. I couldn't touch anything of hers. But maybe she left these messages for me to find when I was ready." Sam chose that moment to wake up, making small, hungry sounds. Jane picked him up, and Robert watched as she fed him with a naturalness that hypnotized him. "Marina wrote something else," he said after a moment, "on the last page." "What did she write?" "If you're reading this and I'm not here, I want you to know it's okay to love again. The heart has no limits. You don't honor me by staying alone. You honor me by being happy." Jane felt tears in her own eyes. She was very wise. "Jane," Robert said suddenly, moving to sit next to her, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm falling in love with you." The world seemed to stop. Jane looked at him, Sam still in her arms, not knowing what to say. "I know it's complicated," Robert continued quickly. "I know I'm technically your boss. I know you're financially dependent on me. I know it might look like I'm taking advantage." "Robert," Jane interrupted him, "just be quiet." And then, with Sam safe between them, Jane leaned in and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, but full of promise. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered against his lips. "But I'm scared." "Of what?" "That this is all a dream. That one day you'll wake up and realize we're not what you really want. A woman with nothing, and her baby." Robert took her face in his hands. "You are not a woman with nothing. You are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I've ever met. And Sam is the son I always wanted. Not by blood, but by choice." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I want to make this official. I want you and Sam to move into the main house. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're close. I want to be Sam's father, legally, if you'll let me." "Robert, that's a huge step." "I know, and it doesn't have to be now. We can take it slow, but you need to know that this isn't temporary for me. You are not a replacement for Marina and the baby I lost. You are my second chance to have the family I always dreamed of." Sam cooed between them, as if in agreement. That night, after putting Sam to bed, they sat together on the porch of the guest house, looking at the stars. "Tell me about Mark," Robert asked softly. "Sam's father." Jane sighed. "There's not much to tell. We met in college. At first he was charming, attentive, but after we moved in together he started to change. He controlled everything, my money, my friends, my time. When I got pregnant it got worse. He said I'd trapped him, that I'd ruined his life." "Did he hurt you?" Robert asked, and there was something dangerous in his voice. "Not physically, but emotionally?" "Yes. He convinced me I was worthless, that no one else would ever want me, especially pregnant. When I finally got the courage to leave, he made good on his threat to leave me on the street." "Does he know about Sam?" "No, and he never will. He's not on the birth certificate. He legally doesn't exist for us." "Good," Robert said firmly, "because the only father Sam needs is already here." Jane looked at him in awe. Do you really want to be his father?" "I already am." Robert replied simply. In my heart, I already am. The following weeks were magical. Robert started working from home more frequently, turning a room into an office to be close. Jane continued organizing the library, now with Sam in a playpen nearby, surrounded by toys. Carmen became an adoptive aunt, coming over for lunch regularly just to hold the baby. I've never seen Robert so happy, she confided to Jane one day. Not even with Marina. It's different now, more mature, more complete. I'm scared I'm going to mess it up, Jane admitted. Why would you mess it up? Because good things don't last for me. My parents, my previous relationship, everything good in my life eventually disappears. Carmen took her hands. Honey, Robert isn't going anywhere. That man has been half alive for 5 years, and you and Sam have resurrected him. He needs you as much as you need him. One night, when Sam was 2 months old, something extraordinary happened. The three of them were in the main house living room, Robert reading reports while Jane played with Sam on the rug. Mama, Sam suddenly babbled. Both adults froze. He said it, Robert started. Mama, Sam repeated, more clearly this time, looking directly at Jane. His first word, Jane exclaimed, picking up Sam and twirling with him. Papa, Sam continued, reaching his little arms out to Robert. Robert dropped his reports, his eyes filled with tears. He called me Papa. He called you Papa, Jane confirmed, bringing Sam to him. Robert took the baby, holding him as if he were the most precious treasure in the world. Hello, son, he whispered. It was at that moment that Jane knew for sure. This was real. This was permanent. This was love. Robert, she said softly. Yes? Yes, to moving into the main house. Yes, to being an official family. Yes, to everything. Robert looked at her with so much love it took her breath away. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. With Sam between them, they kissed over his little head, sealing an unspoken promise. They were no longer three separate people brought together by circumstance. They were a family united by choice, by love, by the decision to build something beautiful from the ashes of their past losses. That night, as they moved Jane's things to the main bedroom, she had insisted on sleeping separately until they were sure, and Robert had respected her decision. They found a photo that Carmen had taken without them noticing. The three of them on the couch, Sam asleep on Robert's chest while Jane read, her hand resting casually on his. We look like a real family, Jane observed in awe. We don't just look like one, Robert corrected, hugging her from behind as they both watched Sam sleep in his new crib, in his new room, in his new home. We are a real family. And as the moon illuminated the room where her son slept, Jane and Robert knew they had found something neither of them had expected. A love born not of the fiery passion of youth, but of deep understanding, mutual respect, and the conscious decision to heal together. The journey was just beginning, but they had already traveled the most difficult path, from loneliness to love, from loss to hope, from strangers to family. 6 months had passed since Sam came into the world, and life in the Navarro mansion had found a rhythm that neither of them had expected, but that both had come to cherish. Every morning, Robert woke up not to the familiar emptiness he had known for 5 years, but to the anticipation of hearing the little voices coming from the other side of the hallway. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed again. Jane was in the kitchen preparing breakfast with Sam in his high chair, babbling happily as he played with small pieces of banana. There was something different about her that morning, a luminosity that Robert had started to notice but didn't dare comment on for fear it would disappear. Good morning, family, Robert said as he entered, a phrase he had started to use naturally over the past few weeks. Papa! Sam immediately cooed, reaching out his sticky little arms to him. Good morning, champ, Robert replied, picking the baby up despite Jane's protests about the banana stains on his suit. How's the man of the house doing? Robert, you're going to ruin your shirt, Jane protested, but her smile betrayed her feigned exasperation. Shirts can be washed, he replied, sitting down with Sam on his knees. Moments with my son can't be repeated. My son. The words came out so naturally now that neither of them stopped to think about them. But every time she heard them, Jane's heart expanded a little more. Coffee, she asked, already pouring a cup. Please. How did you sleep? Better. Sam only woke up once last night. He's growing, Robert observed, touching the baby's chubby cheek. Dr. Miller said he's already in the normal percentile for his age. He doesn't look like a premature baby anymore. He's a fighter. Jane smiled, pouring her own coffee. Just like his. She stopped, blushing. His mom, Robert finished softly. But there was something in his eyes that suggested he had understood what she had really been about to say. The moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Carmen appeared in the kitchen entrance with a worried expression. "Robert, there's someone at the door who says he's the baby's father." The world stopped. The coffee cup slipped from Jane's hands, shattering on the floor. Sam, sensing the sudden tension, began to cry. "What did you say?" Robert asked, his voice dangerously low as he automatically began to cradle Sam. "A young man named Mark Miller says he's Sam's father and that he has legal rights." Jane had gone as pale as the wall. "No," she whispered. "It can't be. He never wanted to know anything about the baby." "Where is he?" Robert asked, handing Sam back to Jane and standing up. "At the front gate. I didn't let him in." "Good. Jane, stay here with Sam. Carmen, call my lawyer. Now." "Robert, no." Jane grabbed his arm. He can get aggressive when he doesn't get what he wants." "Then that's perfect," Robert replied. And there was something fierce in his expression that Jane had never seen before. "Because I can get very aggressive too when someone threatens my family." Robert headed for the front door, each step echoing with determination. For 3 months, he had been living in a bubble of domestic happiness, allowing himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had found his happy ending. But now reality had come to knock on his door. Literally. Mark Miller was standing in front of the gate, dressed in jeans and a shirt that had seen better days. He was younger than Robert had expected, maybe Jane's age, with the kind of smile that had probably charmed many women. But Robert could see something else. The aggressive posture, the way his eyes moved calculatingly, assessing the visible wealth around him. "Mark Miller?" Robert asked through the intercom. "Who's asking?" "The owner of this property." "What do you want?" "I want to see Jane and my son." "Jane doesn't want to see you, and the child is not yours." Mark laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Look, Mr. Rich Guy, I don't know what game you're playing with my ex and my son, but I have rights. I'm the biological father. Where were you when she was pregnant and sleeping on the street? That's none of your business. Anything that has to do with my family is my business." "Your family?" Mark took a step closer to the gate. "Jane is a gold digger, don't you see? She got pregnant on purpose to trap me, and when that didn't work, now she's trying to trap you." Robert felt a rage so profound he had to clench his fists to control himself. "I think this conversation is over." "Don't you dare walk away from me," Mark yelled. "I have rights. That's my son, and I'm going to take him. His name is not on the birth certificate. I can do a paternity test, and when I prove he's mine, I'm taking him." "Do you know how much a baby can be worth on the black market?" That was the last straw. Robert opened the gate and walked out, approaching Mark with a calm that was more terrifying than any shout. Although Mark was younger, Robert was taller, more imposing, and had the confidence that comes from wealth and power. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice barely a whisper but loaded with menace. "If you ever, and I mean ever, come near my family again, if you utter Jane's name, if you even think about Sam, I will make your life a living hell. I have resources you can't even imagine, and I'll have no problem using them." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you," Robert replied. "Now get off my property before I call the police." "This isn't over." Mark backed away, but Robert could see fear in his eyes. "That boy is mine, and I'll get him back." "That boy is mine," Robert responded, with a finality that admitted no discussion. "Legally, emotionally, in every way that matters. And if you try to harm him or his mother, you will discover exactly why you don't mess with my family." Mark left, but not before casting a look of pure hatred toward the house. When Robert came back inside, he found Jane crying in the kitchen, holding Sam against her chest. "He's going to take my baby," she sobbed. "He'll find a way. He always finds a way." "No," Robert said firmly, hugging them both. "That's not going to happen, I promise you. You don't understand. He's persistent, manipulative. When he wants something, he doesn't stop until he gets it. Then he's never dealt with someone like me." Carmen entered, her expression tense. Your lawyer is on his way. I also called private security. They're going to watch the property 24/7. Good. What else do we know about Mark Miller? I made some calls, Carmen replied. And Robert remembered why he had kept her as an assistant for so many years. She was incredibly efficient. He has a history of abusive relationships. He's been unemployed for the last 6 months, and apparently he asked about you before he came here. What kind of questions? About your fortune, about whether you had a family, about whether you would be susceptible to extortion. Robert's stomach sank. He's not here for Sam. He's here for money. What? Jane looked up, horror and relief mixing in her voice. Think about it. He never bothered to see you throughout the pregnancy. He never asked about the baby. But now, after you moved in with me, he suddenly shows up, claiming paternal rights. He wants money. Jane's face registered the horror and relief. He doesn't want Sam. He wants money, which is perfect. Robert smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile, because now I know exactly how to handle him. Robert's lawyer, Elio Miller, no relation, arrived an hour later. He was an older man with gray hair and a reputation for being one of the best family lawyers in the country. The situation is complex, he explained after hearing all the details. If he can prove biological paternity, he has legal rights, but there are several factors in our favor. What are they? Jane asked anxiously. First, abandonment. Not only did he abandon you during the pregnancy, but he has not provided any financial or emotional support. Second, his apparent financial motivation. And third, Robert can start adoption proceedings. Adoption? Robert asked. If Jane agrees, you can legally adopt Sam. Once that happens, you'll have the same rights as the biological father. And since you've been providing for the child since birth, a judge will likely rule in your favor. Jane? Robert turned to her. Jane looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, but also with determination. Yes, of course. You are his father in every way that matters. There's one more thing, Leo continued. We could be looking at a case of extortion. If Mark is threatening to take the child unless he receives money, that's a crime. What do you suggest? A controlled meeting with a recording. Let him reveal his true intentions. That afternoon, while Sam was taking his nap, Robert found Jane in the library. She had returned to work there over the past few weeks, finding peace in the organization of the books. But now she was sitting on one of the rolling ladders, looking lost in thought at the bookshelves. What are you thinking about? He asked, sitting on the step below her. About what my life was like 4 months ago, she said softly. I was alone, scared, homeless. And now I have more than I ever dreamed of. A family, a home, someone who loves my son as if he were his own. I'm afraid Mark is going to ruin everything. Robert took her hand. Jane, look at me. She lowered her gaze to him. I'm not going to let anything or anyone hurt our family. Sam is my son. You are... He stopped, searching for the right words. I'm what? You are the woman I'm falling more and more in love with every day. You're the mother of my son. You're my future. Jane felt fresh tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. Robert, I know we've been avoiding talking about this. I know the circumstances have been complicated, but I can't keep pretending this is temporary, that it's just a situation of convenience. It's not temporary, Robert agreed. At least not for me. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm also falling more in love with you every day. The way you hold Sam, the way you stay up when he's sick, the way you look at me as if I'm precious instead of a charity case. Robert stood up slowly, moving closer until they were at the same height on the ladder. It has never been charity. From the very first day, it has been a gift. A gift? You brought life back to this house. You brought life back to my heart. You gave me a son I adore, and you gave me the chance to love again. He leaned in toward her, and this time when they kissed, there was no excitement, no doubt. It was a kiss that sealed unspoken promises, that declared intentions, that established a future. When they separated, both were breathless. Robert, Jane whispered, what's going to happen with Mark? He's going to find out that he chose the wrong family to mess with, he replied, and there was steel in his voice. But more importantly, he's going to find out that Sam has a father who will protect him with everything he has. And us? What's going to happen with us? Robert smiled. the first genuine smile since Mark's appearance that morning. "We are going to be happy. We're going to raise Sam together. We're going to get gray hair fighting over whether he can have a dog. We're going to watch him graduate, get married, give us grandchildren. Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That night, after putting Sam to bed, they sat together on the couch in the main living room. For the first time since Mark had appeared, there was peace in the house. "You know what's the strangest thing about all this?" Jane said softly. "What?" For a moment, when Mark was shouting, I was afraid he was right, that maybe I was just another charity project for you. Robert turned to her, taking her face in his hands. "Look at me," he ordered softly. "Do you see charity in my eyes?" Jane looked at him deeply. Instead of pity or duty, she saw pure love, devotion, and something deeper that had no name. "No," she whispered. "I see love. You see love because that's what's there. I love you. I love Sam. I love the life we've built together. You are not my charity, Jane. You are my salvation." "Your salvation?" "For 5 years, I was dead inside. You and Sam brought me back to life. You gave me purpose, love, laughter, life. I'm not a monster, but I'll do anything for my family." They kissed under the stars, a kiss that tasted of promises fulfilled and futures secured. "What happens now?" Jane asked when they separated. "Now we officially adopt Sam. We become a legal family, in addition to an emotional one. And after that," Robert smiled, that smile she had learned to love. "After that we live happily ever after. Like in fairy tales? Better," he promised. "Like in real life, with real love and a real family that chose to be together." In the distance, they could hear Sam making small sleeping sounds through the monitor. Their son was safe, protected, loved. And for the first time since Mark had appeared, Jane allowed herself to believe that it really was over. The storm had passed, and now all that remained was calm, love, and the promise of 1,000 more mornings as a family. 6 months later, the courthouse was filled with a golden light that filtered through the tall windows, creating an almost magical atmosphere for what would be one of the most important days in the life of the small Navarro family. Robert nervously adjusted his tie for the 5th time in 10 minutes, while Jane gently rocked Sam, who seemed fascinated by the high ceilings and the echoes of voices that resonated through the building. "Are you nervous?" Jane asked, noticing Robert's trembling hands. "Terrified," he admitted with a smile. "I know it's just a formality after everything that happened with Mark, but what? But it means he will officially be your son." "Our son," Robert corrected, taking Jane's free hand. "Sam was already mine in my heart from the day he was born, but today he becomes mine in the eyes of the law." Carmen appeared in the hallway, radiant in her navy blue dress. Over the past few months, she had become much more than an assistant. She was Sam's adoptive aunt, Jane's confidant, and the person who had witnessed Robert's complete transformation from an empty man to a devoted father. "Ready?" Judge Martinez asked. "He's waiting for you." Leo had prepared them well. The adoption process had been expedited thanks to the evidence against Mark, who had finally signed a complete waiver of his parental rights in exchange for not pressing criminal charges for extortion. But still, this moment felt monumental. They entered the courtroom, where Judge Martinez, an older man with kind eyes and a warm smile, was waiting for them behind his desk. "Good morning, Navarro family," he said, and those simple words made Jane feel tears in her eyes. "Good morning, Your Honor," Robert replied, his voice slightly hoarse with emotion. "Well, after reviewing all the documents, testimonies, and evidence presented, I must say that I have rarely seen such a clear case. Mr. Navarro, from the day Sam was born, you have acted as his father in every aspect. You have provided medical care, financial support, unconditional love, and emotional stability." Sam chose that moment to babble "Papa" clearly, looking directly at Robert. The judge chuckled. "It seems young Sam also has an opinion on the matter." "He's always known who his daddy is," Jane said softly. "Miss Miller, soon to be Mrs. Navarro, right?" Jane blushed. "We hope so, Your Honor." "Excellent. Well then, by the power vested in me by the state, I declare that the adoption of Sam Navarro by Robert Navarro is complete and legal. Sam, you officially have a daddy who loves you more than life itself." Robert couldn't hold back the tears. He took Sam from Jane's arms and hugged him against his chest, whispering words of love that only his son could hear. "You're officially mine, champ. Forever." After signing the papers and receiving the official certificates, they left the courthouse as a legally recognized family. But the surprises of the day were just beginning. "Where are we going now?" Jane asked, as Robert buckled Sam into his car seat. "To celebrate," Robert replied mysteriously. "There's something I want to show you." They drove in comfortable silence, with Sam sleeping peacefully in the back seat. Jane noticed they weren't heading home, but toward the city center, specifically the financial district. "Robert, why are we going to your office?" "We're not going to my office," he smiled. "We're going to the place where it all began." When they parked in front of the corporate building where they had met 10 months ago, Jane felt a wave of emotions. So much had changed since that day when she had sat under the tree, pregnant, alone, and desperate. "Do you remember this place?" Robert asked as he took Sam out of the car. "How could I forget? This is where my life changed forever." They walked to the same tree where it had all started. Someone had placed a small bench under it, and on the bench there was a bouquet of white flowers and a small plaque that read, "Where love found its way." "Did you do this?" Jane asked, touching the plaque with trembling fingers. "I wanted to mark the place where I met my family," Robert explained, "where a brave woman asked for help and changed my life forever." They sat on the bench with Sam between them, looking toward the building where Robert had once lived an empty life, filled only with work and money. "You know what I was thinking that day when I walked up to you?" Robert asked. "What?" "I was thinking that you were probably just another problem that wasn't mine, but something in the way you protected your belly, in the way you talked to Sam even though he wasn't born yet, reminded me that I had lost my humanity somewhere along the way. And I was thinking that it was the end," Jane admitted, "that I had hit rock bottom and there was no way out. And now I know it wasn't the end. It was the beginning." Robert suddenly stood up, handing Sam to her. "Jane, there's one more thing I want to do here." "What?" He knelt in front of the bench, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. Jane's eyes went wide. "Jane Miller," he began, his voice trembling with emotion. 10 months ago you saved me from an empty life. You gave me purpose, a son, and a love I didn't know was possible. You taught me that family isn't about blood, but about choice, commitment, and unconditional love." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring surrounded by 2 smaller stones. "The center diamond is you," he explained. "The 2 side stones are Sam and me. Together, we are complete. Jane, will you marry me? Will you officially be my wife, as you are already my life partner, my best friend, and the love of my life?" Sam chose that perfect moment to clap and shout, "Mama! Papa!" as if he understood the importance of the moment. "Yes," Jane sobbed, extending her trembling hand. "Yes, of course, yes." Robert slid the ring onto her finger, stood up, and kissed her deeply, while Sam laughed between them, as if celebrating too. "I love you," Robert murmured against her lips. "I love you too," Jane replied. "You, and the incredible life we've built together." As they embraced under the same tree where their paths had crossed, neither of them noticed that Carmen had been discreetly taking photos from the car. Later, those photos would become the most treasured possessions in their family album. A year later, a small but perfect wedding was held in the garden of the Navarro mansion, with only the closest friends and colleagues. Leo had officiated the ceremony. Carmen had been the maid of honor, and Sam, now walking with wobbly but determined steps, had been the ring bearer, with the rings safely in a small basket that Carmen discreetly held nearby. But the most magical moment came during the reception, when Sam, who had been playing on the lawn, suddenly stood up and walked directly toward Robert and Jane, shouting, "Mama! Papa!" with his arms outstretched. "His first official steps!" Carmen yelled, recording everything on video. "The perfect day to start walking," Robert murmured, picking up his son and hugging his new wife. 5 years later, "Daddy, tell the story again," 5-year-old Sam asked, snuggling between Robert and Jane on the library couch. "Which story, champ?" "The story of how you found me." Jane smiled, stroking her son's dark hair. This had been his favorite bedtime story for years. "Well," Robert began. Once upon a time, there was a very lonely man who thought he had everything he needed in life, but he didn't have a family. And there was a very brave mommy who was expecting a very special baby. Sam interrupted, knowing the story by heart. Exactly. And one day that brave mommy asked for help, and the lonely man decided to listen. And when they met, they realized they had been looking for each other their whole lives without knowing it. And then they fell in love. Jane confirmed. And they discovered that the best families are the ones you choose, not the ones you're born into. And they lived happily ever after. They are living happily ever after, Robert corrected, because every day they choose to love each other more. Sam was silent for a moment, processing. Daddy, can I tell you a secret? Of course. I'm happy that my other daddy went away, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't have found you. And you're the best daddy in the world. Robert felt tears in his eyes, as always when Sam reminded him how lucky he was. You know what, Sam? You're the best son in the world, and your mommy is the best wife in the world. And together, we are the best family in the world. Forever. Forever, both parents promised in unison. That night, after putting Sam to bed, Robert and Jane sat on their terrace, looking at the stars as they had done so many times over the past few years. Do you ever regret it? Jane asked softly. Regret what? Stopping that day? Complicating your perfectly ordered life? Robert laughed, hugging her closer. My life wasn't perfect, love. It was empty. You filled it with purpose, with love, with laughter, with life. I don't regret a single moment. Not even when Sam put toothpaste on your laptop. Not even then? She laughed. Especially not then. Because every mischief, every sleepless night, every moment of chaos, all of that means I have a family that loves me. We love you, Jane confirmed, more than words can express. As they sat there, embraced under the stars, they both reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. From a chance encounter under a tree to becoming a solid family, they had learned that true love doesn't always arrive in the way you expect. Sometimes it arrives when you least expect it, when you need it most, and when you have the courage to open the door to it. And sometimes, just sometimes, a simple request for help can change not just one life, but 3 lives, forever. In the next room, Sam slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of the next day's adventures, safe in the knowledge that he had parents who would love him no matter what. And somewhere in the financial district, a small bench under a tree waited silently to remind anyone who passed by that miracles happen every day when we have the courage to help a stranger and an open heart to receive love. Because in the end, that is the true magic of love. It has the power to transform lives, heal broken hearts, and create families where there was once only loneliness. The circle was complete. The story had found its perfect ending, and they lived happily ever after.